On 15th April 2023, war broke out in Sudan between Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces, a paramilitary force commanded by General Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, better known as Hemeti. 2 years later, the war is still on. Millions of Sudanese families have fled brutal violence, and many are sleeping in makeshift shelters without clean water, safety, or medical care. Tens of thousands have been killed. The war in Sudan has created one of the worst humanitarian and displacement crises in the world. The United Nations has warned the humanitarian crisis is getting worse and the needs far exceed the resources.
There is no sign of de-escalation. To the contrary, developments on the ground indicate clear preparations for intensified hostilities with everything that implies for its long-suffering people. States, especially those who have influence over the parties to the conflict, are put on notice that unless they act quickly and decisively, there will be more of the carnage and bloodshed and the atrocities that we have already witnessed.
So where is the world when all this is happening? I spoke to Yusuf Serunkuma, an expert in the Horn of Africa affairs and a researcher at Makerere University. Millions have been displaced in Sudan. Thousands are said to be dead. And looks like the world has stopped caring about Sudan.
No, they haven't stopped caring about Sudan. It's just that the world is in so much chaos. There's so much chaos around the world. And because the genocide in Palestine is very close to, it affects what you call the center of the world. And I use that not in praise of the center, but because it's a usable term in political economy. So the center, the biggest cameras are focused on Gaza and Palestine. The biggest activists have been focused on Gaza. And because, Israel is involved and Israel controls the major superpower. So because of Gaza, it might look like there's not focus on Sudan. But I think their voice is speaking about Sudan.
Security Council in September sat down, and among the issues that they resolved was to renew the sanctions against Sudan. And of course, that includes the arms embargo. The UN Security Council thinks that the external forces are supporting the warring sides in Sudan. Who could be behind supplying military weapons to RSF maybe and the Sudan army?
When you see the UN saying we put sanctions against Sudan, the fighters in Sudan, including an arms embargo, the official channels through which arms are sold to Sudan could have been closed. But the unofficial ones keep coming, right? And you need to understand that the arms trade is not normally in the open, right? And the funniest part is that the major funder of the UN resolutions are actually the people who have interest in Sudan. And they're the key players in Sudan. So the routes through which arms reach Sudan are actually open. They're not closed. So officially, you have these, bombastic statements. But weapons actually continue coming to Sudan.
We've seen the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights saying that the world needs to act and act now and take bold steps. We've seen people calling for cessation of hostilities. We've seen people calling for, the warring sides to allow relief reach the intended people. But is that enough? Because, they say when two bulls are fighting, it is the grass to suffer. And for this case, it is the people who are suffering. People are dying.
In geopolitics, the biggest players don't care about human rights. They don't care about relief. They care about permanent interests. So, that people are dying, the biggest players in this conflict don't really care. All they care about is what happens at the end of the day. Do we have a friendly government in charge? Right? So there'll be calls for relief. Definitely. They talk a good game. The speeches you're going to hear from international humanitarian organizations is going to be good. But the buck starts and ends with the United States, with Europe. Unless the South Sudan Armed Forces get the upper hand over this conflict and they're able to put the RSF under absolute control. And that will take, among other things, cutting off supplies, arms supplies from UAE. So, of course, straight from the US. If they're able to do that, then we see sort of a calm happening. But before that happens, all these statements from the biggest humanitarian organizations make no sense. They make zero sense unless the big dogs pronounce themselves.
So thank you so much for your time.
Welcome, sir.
And we definitely keep praying for the people of Sudan and hope for the best.
The pen is mine, yeah.